So on this evening, we give this particular attention to the Last Supper and to the washing of the disciples' feet, which in John's version of the gospel is all tied up together. It's all part of the same thing. In a sense, when Jesus says, "This is my body broken and this is my blood shed," and then he says, "I'm going to wash your feet and I'll serve you," it's all part of the same essential message. He's handing over leadership from himself to the disciples. They are the people he's been training for the last 3 years. They have followed him, walked with him, lived with him, slept with him, gone on a boat together, eat together, had fellowship together, seemingly had really good times together as well, just fun time. But now he knows that his hour is near, and that he needs to leave, and so he has to prepare his disciples to take over where he leads off. And he hands over a particular style of leadership, which is what I want us to reflect on this evening. A style of leadership that we get from the Gospels, from listening to and watching what Jesus does. And in modern popular language, we would call this style of leadership servant leadership. Servant leadership. That has been very popularized by the Greenleaf Foundation, and it's a well-known model in leadership circles. But I want us to begin to think about the servant leadership that Jesus exemplifies as we see it throughout the scriptures, because he, in a sense, didn't invent it. He brought it from the Godhead. He brought it from God the Father himself. So in a sense, it's a triune kind of leadership. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit working together. We know this because in Genesis 1, right back at the very beginning, when God creates the heaven and the earth, and then he creates humankind, the very first thing that he does when he's created Adam and Eve is that he instructs them to go and take care of the world. And he tells them to do it together. He doesn't tell the husband, Adam, "You must go look after the world and your wife can help you." We don't get that in the Bible. We get God says to Adam and Eve, "Go take care of the world, go look after it, go steward it, go tend and care for it." They do it together as a couple, as an equal partnership. They work together and they work for the earth. This is this very first delegation that God gives to humankind and Adam and Eve, who are our foreparents. And in a sense, they have handed it down to us through the generations. And you and I still carry that same responsibility to take care of the world, but to do it not in a hierarchical fashion, but rather in this very egalitarian way as we work together in partnership and as we think about the earth on which we live. In Exodus chapter 19, Moses meets with God on Mount Sinai, receives the 10 Commandments, and he has long conversations with God. We know when he comes down the mountain, his face is like really, really shiny because he's been in the presence of God. Everybody's quite freaked out, and so he puts on what I guess is a bit like a beekeeper's sort of veil that covers his face to try and not frighten the people. And he says to them in Ezekiel 19, or rather God says to them, that the people of Israel will be priests, royal priesthood, and that they will be a holy nation, and that they will make for God a kingdom of holy people. This is the commandment that God gives through Moses to the people of Israel, that they should all be priests, not just the one who dresses funny like me, but all of us. We're all priests. This is the idea, Israel, the whole nation of Israel. They're supposed to be priests that lead us into the presence of God and show and reveal to us who God is. 1 Peter 2, right towards the end of the New Testament, Peter says something very similar. He says to the church, the young church, he says, "You are chosen people. You are a royal priesthood." All of us sitting here today, we're all priests. We're all chosen, we're all sanctified, we're all set aside, we're all co-workers together with God as a collection, as a collective of priests working together to make God known to the human race. That's an interesting kind of leadership, isn't it? Very participative, very horizontal, very inclusive, and very decentralized. We see this in Jesus' ministry as well, across the Gospels. Jesus' style of leadership is not accidental, it's quite intentional. He has 12 disciples who he really invests in. He only has, we think, a few years, 3 years is what we think, 3 years of ministry. And he uses those 3 years to live with the disciples. I don't know if they were married, but they left their wives. And they followed Jesus. And they lived together like a little commune. You wonder, maybe the wives were happy the husbands were not gone. Or maybe they missed them. Or maybe they came with. We don't know. We don't get all the details in the Bible. But Jesus spends this intensive time discipling them, 24/7, 365 days a year, over 3 years. That's quite a masterclass, isn't it? From the 12, he has 3 that are the center 3, Peter, James, and John. They're the ones who go up on the mountain and see the transfiguration. They're the ones he talks to the most often. He keeps coming back to those 3. They're the 3 inner circle, and they are very important to him. So he has these 3, and then he has a total of 12, right? So 4 times that number. And then in some passages, we get the 72. In other passages, it says 70. So 70 or 72. There's the slightly larger group of disciples. Those come up in Luke 10. And then as we read in other passages, it seems like there's many other followers, aanhangers, aanhangsels maybe. They're just people who tag along. They follow him. And they're interested in him, but they might not be sort of part of the inner circle. They're certainly not part of the 12. They're not part of the 72. But they recognize this is a person worth following. And so they move around with him. And we have that when he crosses over the lake. They all run around to the other side, and then he crosses back, and they all come back because they know he is a good person to follow. So he has this very sort of pyramid scheme, isn't it? Not the bad pyramid scheme, but he has this sense that he's got the small group that he really invests in, the 3, and then he has this larger group, 3 plus the other 8, or 8, is it 12? Thank you for my maths. And then he spends a lot of time with them. And then there's this larger group, the 72, who come in a little bit later. They're amongst the group that he sends out to go and cast out demons and heal people and so on. And then we have the larger crowds of people who are interested but not fully committed, but they're there and they hear his teaching a lot. And he ministers to all of them. He's really interested in this kind of style of leadership, very hands-on, very direct. In the next chapter after what we read today, chapter 13, if we go to chapter 14, we will read Jesus handing over. In the military, we always have this sort of takeover, handover. What is it called, those of you in the military? There's a nice word for it. If you retire or leave or get transferred, then you have to package everything and hand it on to the next person. A very formal way. He does this in those chapters 14 up until his arrest. He tries to prepare the disciples to lead the church in his absence. And in that passage, he says to them that the Holy Spirit will take over where he leaves off. So he's not abandoning them. He's not just hopping onto the cross, dying, disappearing, and then they're left on their own. He sends the Holy Spirit to come and take over and continue the work. He even says to them that the Holy Spirit will remind them of everything that he has said. So they, like me, will forget people's names and stuff like that. And the Holy Spirit will come and remind them of everything that Jesus had taught them. He wants to be sure that there is continuity and that when he leaves, it all doesn't fall apart. In some passages, he says that he will send the Holy Spirit. And then in some other passages, he says the Father will send the Holy Spirit. Whichever one it is, it means that the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, they're all in agreement. Jesus will leave, and Holy Spirit will come and take over. There is succession planning in the way that Jesus leads. He doesn't drop them and just disappear. After Jesus, after Pentecost, after the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, Paul starts to teach us about the gifts of the Spirit in 1 Corinthians 12. And he says that God, through the Holy Spirit, gives every single one of us gifts to exercise in his church to build up the common life of the people. That we're all gifted with something. Maybe grand, it may be small, it may be unusual, it may be ordinary, but all of us, each of us, is gifted with something in order to continue God's ministry, Jesus' ministry, here among us. And these gifts point to the idea that everyone is gifted, that those gifts are diverse and not the same, that every single one of them is important, whether they seem impressive or whether they seem ordinary. Every single one is important, and that they are dignified. He even says that those shameful places that we keep hidden from each other, even those are gifts of the Holy Spirit. Everything about us, everything that God gives to us is important, diverse, dignified, and relevant to the building of God's kingdom. And so Paul emphasizes in 1 Corinthians 12 that we need to be one body, made up of many, many different parts, but all working together for a common purpose. He talks about Christ being the head of the church, and then we are the body. He has the head that's thinking and directing and telling us where to go, and then all of us are like good soldiers and following his instructions. I think that this is a kind of leadership that this world could do with. This is a kind of leadership that would be good in governments in South Africa, our GNU, governments in the USA with, governments. We talked about that yesterday, we won't go back today. Governments in the UK, governments on this continent, some of which are just crazy. Governments everywhere, corporates, universities, schools, hospitals, churches, families. This kind of leadership, this sort of leadership that we see from Jesus and that we see from the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, from the beginning of Genesis all the way through to the end of Revelation, we get this kind of participative, collective, flat leadership that's relational, that's skills-based, that thinks about continuity and sustainability and handover, and that has our feet rooted in the soil. And so this evening, we do the washing of the feet. I'm not Jesus. Jabalani's going to work with me. He's not Jesus either. We're just ordinary, just people, just gewone people. But we do this washing because we want, in a sense, for us to leave tonight with just a picture of the servant leadership that Jesus absolutely embodies. That we get down on our knees and you put your foot into our hands and we lovingly and carefully wash your foot. This is not something that we do in ordinary life, right? I've never done this at work. We don't do it in our family. Maybe if you're looking after a very ill person or a very old person, maybe you would bathe them. And that would be something very tender and precious, right? Some of you have known that experience. But this, in a sense, is what it is. It's this intimate engagement between Jesus and his disciples to wash their feet like a servant. So it can talk all night, but I think what we need to do is that we need to move into the doing of the washing of the disciples' feet. And the first thing that Jesus did as he washed their feet was that he took off his outer garments. And so I'm taking off this one. I'm going to try really hard, David, not to break the microphone. And then we're hoping that Lindy's going to bring us some warm water. this towel has shrunk, or maybe I just got fat. Last year, this towel went around me really nicely.
The towel shrunk with you.
It shrunk. Yeah, it shrunk. I did lose weight, so I think it's just shrunk. So let me tell you what's happening as Lauren's bringing up the buckets. I'm going to wash Jabulani's foot, and then he's going to wash mine, and then we're going to take up a station on either side here, and we will wash whoever wants their foot to be washed. The idea is that you would come up, take your shoe off and your sock, one of them. Come up and just wait a little bit in the queue, and then you come and sit in this inside chair like Jabulani is right now. We will then wash, and you move to the chair next to you, and that's where you can put your sock and shoe back on and then go back to your seat. Does that make sense? You don't have to. I know it's like it's a weird, so you don't have to, but you are very welcome to. David, you can mute me, thank you.
From heaven you came, helpless faith, and